Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, December 21st, so we have just a few days until Christmas happens. And yeah, we should just jump into the game quickly and start going. I have basically nothing to say about the accountability section today. Like, over the entire weekend, I spent like the entire weekend either dealing with uh, insomnia and just waking up at the wrong time, or working on my server, doing just kind of a major rewrite that was very much two steps forward, one step back, over and over again. So there was probably close to 30 hours in which no progress could really be confirmed at all. Because I just, with the major rewrites in particular, uh, there is just that chance that you're gonna change everything, and because you're gonna change everything, a lot of things are gonna potentially break in the middle of that. Um, it did occur to me what I've been doing while messing with my server is really probably what they mean when they use the phrase DevOps, which I probably should look up what that means, but haven't gotten around to it. Uh, but yeah, that is probably what I'm doing is some kind of DevOps thing for myself, which sadly, like most jobs in IT, it means you can claim you know how to do something, but without lucking your way into a a job that can then be proven and verified that you actually did work in that field, you don't really get believed. And I get that too. There are definitely a lot of people who I've worked with in IT that did not deserve to be in IT. Um, and that probably is a partial testament to just me personally not having a lot of success in a lot of my jobs, as far as being placed in the place where I would have liked to been, or arguably deserved to be. I would argue that. I'm not sure many other people would. And there still is a big difference between working on a home server and spending an entire weekend and barely making any progress at all, and actually working in a job that's going to start making actual demands of progress and such. Um, so that is also a consideration. But I did finally get all of the Docker compose file down to about 450, but now it's back up to 550 lines of code, and it seems like there's probably no getting it any further. I've been banging my head against a lot of issues. Certainly, trying to get the logging server to be encrypted still needs some work, but at least I figured out what was going on after the entire weekend working on it. It turned out that I was literally just changing the wrong file. Like, there was a file that the server, the systemd server in Linux, was using when it was launched from a Docker container, and then there was a file uh, that the program itself would launch. So every time I would hop into the sandbox, as it were, and log into it, chroot into it, I would run the program. And because I was running the program instead of running the server, it wasn't working, because then I was trying to run a program that was trying to access and gain sole control over the the IP address of that sandbox, and I couldn't do it because it kept on saying, well, this address is already in use, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Is this because of CentOS and Security Enhanced Linux that I can't do this. There's a lot of talk of that, certainly. Guess we just need to play Shadowcraft and Forestcraft today. But in this case, that wasn't the case at all. It had nothing to do with SE Linux. It didn't seem to have anything to do with Docker either. There is something to be said, I think, in particular about how lacking in features and kind of how oddly run Docker is as a program. It feels like it says it's a secure software. People, I think, thought it was a secure software. But there probably is a very good argument to be made that I should abandon learning anything more about Docker and move over to Kubernetes instead, which is probably the new hotness and probably run by, I would say, maybe a little bit less temperamental people. If I was to guess, I could be totally wrong about that. I haven't done my research there. But it does seem like Docker is run by some temperamental people, as is often the case in the more successful Linux projects. This is, of course, a time-honored tradition when you have Linus Torvalds being probably one of the most temperamental people, and him being the one running the Linux kernel, or at least he was, until Microsoft stepped in and potentially has convinced him to take a sabbatical, and eventually I think they're just trying to push him towards stepping down. So did I even really accomplish anything other than just rewriting the files? Not really a lot. It was really just creating a mess and then cleaning up that mess later. That's about it. There's still problems with the Docker Compose YAML format. It's just bad. It really is bad, and I think you could easily replace it with a improved markup language, or take at least concepts and expand them. I think they're serving two masters in a lot of ways. You have people like me who are doing single deployments. Oddly, seemingly a lot of people that make Docker images to just have applications installed locally on their computer instead of having swarms of the same types of servers launched over and over again. And I kind of get that too. Like, that certainly is a thought on the back burner, is that my secondary network attached storage, which was my old server, if I could make a very simplistic compose file there to say, hey, install this, install this, install this, and install this, and that way I could deploy it if something broke easily, that'd be cool. But I don't think it really would be worth the effort, nor do I think it would really work, because there are just some low-level things that don't easily make sense. Like having the network attached storage launch a system log server to take the system log locally and send it to the server is kind of interesting. It makes sense. But then having it install like an antivirus software that then is sandboxed and would have to have a lot of work to potentially unsandbox itself so it could actually access things. That is something that is kind of blatantly obvious about Docker YAML markup language in general, is that you cannot really establish a group of mount points, volumes as they call them, and then just say, all right, these are the volumes that I want to group together, and I want all of these to be used in these different applications and these different containers. You can't do that. Instead, you have to make a dummy, at least the best as I've figured so far, is you have to make a dummy application, then you can import him. But if you import him, also, because I'm using SE Linux on CentOS, which that's a whole nother nightmare. It's super important to, at this point, say do not, for even a second, think about using CentOS, as it's completely abandoned now. Like, but it's also going to be fairly hard to make the decision to try and move over to Debian Linux. That now the good news is I've heard that the original creator of CentOS, before it was bought out by Red Hat, which was bought out by, I believe, IBM, he's going to make a new spin-off called Rock Linux, which one assumes rock solid. And that's, I think, what people want from CentOS more than anything, is a rock solid security-wise setup. But I keep having to go into CentOS 7 and tell it, like, hey, can you quit spamming the messages, the errors with these pointless messages? Now, I don't think any of those are actually, or many of those are actually from the core part of CentOS. They're from other programs I installed. But it does go to show that there might be a case to argue that there's been a delay in updating CentOS. So, and as such, there's been a delay in there's been a delay in the updating of other software too, because if you can't update the kernel and the main part of the operating system, you can't update anything else. I did want to record earlier today, but man, I've just been having a horrible time getting out of bed and just getting moving. Like I was awake at 10 a.m. and ready to stream, and here we started at 2. So it was just 4 hours of me distracting myself. I did upgrade my Nextcloud software too. We have a character called Adim Digelat on the chat saying hi. Hi, I do see you. But yeah, updating Nextcloud in a Docker container is not actually supposed to be allowed, and I think I probably overrid it, and that's probably a mistake, because now I've got like one wrong file, and since Nextcloud is super obsessed with trying to add security, they sign every single file and will complain if files are not the right checksum of the signed files that they expect. So they have a different like hash for every single file that's supposed to be in the server. But yeah, mostly all I was doing there was moving more files inside of the Docker container and trying to get rid of files that don't need direct access. Like it's actually fairly trivial to copy files in and out anyways of a sandbox. So the only files that really need direct access are things that would be custom files. And that's certainly a next step as I continue to waste tons of time on this project is to try and have more of a automated process, so I know that I could potentially just hand a single folder with a small amount of files in it, and then those small amount of files will spin up a much larger file, much larger collection of data. Particularly with Nextcloud, like if you can get all of these settings right on Nextcloud, you could potentially spin up a server that would clone all the users' data across the internet. Oh, I did. That was one thing I did get successful. There were some small victories. I got finally figured out a software that I could use, SFTP, the latest iteration of 3 very old file transfer protocols. There's one called SCP, Secure Copy, which I don't think is that secure. Then there's FTP, which is definitely not secure. And then FTPS is an expansion of that for to make it slightly secure. And then there's SFTP, which I think is probably the software that's touched upon and updated the most. So that's your best bet. Are any of these really great services? No, I mean, but there really is an imbalance between the client application's capabilities and what a server application could offer. Like, ideally, you would have something like BitTorrent Sync, which is now called like Resilio Sync, and there would be just like, and that's not new software nowadays, but that would have been a potential game changer software for moving files around. But it didn't get adopted, and the BitTorrent concept really doesn't make any sense when you have just 1 or 2 other computers that are going to have that same data. BitTorrents really only work when you have people seeding and sharing the same data. So the easiest way to move small amounts of files is just to have people download it. And so potentially an HTML5 uploader and downloader website probably would be about your best bet. It's just a very simplistic thing, and maybe I should look that up. Yeah, is to see if there is just some kind of HTML5 that would say, hey, drag your files here and upload it. Technically, I guess that would be Nextcloud, though. Nextcloud lets you do that, and a lot more, a ton more than that. So it'd be kind of ridiculous just to have a single use utility like that, unless that's specifically what you want. I still haven't tested FTPS. I've been jumping around in loops deciding whether or not I want to use the normal port numbers, which are the low port numbers of 21 and 22, and those are protected port numbers in Linux, or at least in SE Linux. And they're probably port numbers that would be blocked if you tried to go through the internet. So eventually I decided I needed to put the port numbers into a higher, above 1024 port number instead. And yeah, that's the right reason. I already had something, a different server set using port 22 for SSH, so you can't use port 22 for SFTP, which uses SSH also, and the other one at the same time when you're isolating them and having them access different files. And so at that point it just made sense to do that with the FTPS also and bring that to port 20, not 21, but a higher number than 21. And I believe there's what I realized after the fact is that if I'm going to use trivial FTP as a server, which is another project that's as of yet not been worked on, that will almost certainly use port 21. And for a brief moment here, and this is how I know I've really gone off the rails with this. Instead of finishing up Virtue's Last Reward, which I clearly don't care about at all. But I know I've gone completely off the rails here because I'm getting frustrated at times, and then instead of moving on to doing some recording or something, I'm moving on to working on a different part of a problem, or a different computer nerd thing. In this case, I've been noticing that my router has failed to do its ad blocking in a few instances, and I was just wondering why that was, and then I looked at it, and it turned out that the list of bad servers, like ad servers that are being blocked, was truncated. It wasn't the complete list. And then I looked at the scheduled commands I had done, and unfortunately I'd set them to happen at the exact same time. 3 different commands happened at the exact same time. So that means in most cases the download would have been done and before the second command even began. But in some cases it wasn't done. So when I went and changed the same file and started manipulating the same file, it was effectively corrupting the file and not loading in all the information. This is easily corrected, though. All you have to do in Linux is just add a ampersand and then another ampersand, and then put the second command after that, and then another ampersand and the third command, and all that tells Linux to do is just execute the commands one in a row. At least I think that's what it does. And that should have been the solution anyway. So that's kind of a great example, simplistic example, relatively speaking, of how you can make things work, but you may not have made them work the best possible way. And as I was doing that, I adjusted my quality of service, and I added SFTP and FTPS as services that should not take up all the bandwidth. I've lowered the maximum amount of bandwidth I think I have, therefore it should have potentially a little less network troubles like we've been seeing over the past couple streams. I finally got a Windows client called Free File Sync, I believe is the name of it, to actually use a private key. What it turned out to be the problem, as I worked on it, is just the way I formatted the private key was not what it liked. So I used a different program as I was testing out different Windows, like SFTP servers, not servers, clients, that would synchronize my Windows PC files, or at least most of them. It's going to skip the ones it can't access, like the swap file and the page file and things like that don't matter. But that does certainly open the door that there may be a couple of files that if I tried to restore from this backup, it really wouldn't work. But Windows 10 is pretty much in that case always, is that restoring from a full backup almost never works. And that's why Microsoft has pretty much completely de-emphasized the ability to do it. But yeah, so I used this program called WinSCP, I believe is the name of it, and it converted the private key file to a different format automatically, which was nice. In fact, WinSCP is probably the better technical software to use if you want to synchronize a Windows server to a Linux server. But it's too technical, so that's why I decided on Free File Sync. Level by Level Gaming is on the chat saying hello, Rydo. high level by level gaming. I suppose since it is this close to the holidays, there is a decent chance people will have more free time. Although, yeah, I guess someone like me who's just running a YouTube channel and mostly not doing anything else, and barely even doing the YouTube channel, probably didn't grasp as much of the fact that while people may have been stuck at their homes, that doesn't inherently mean that they were given a unlimited amount of free time. If anything, if you have kids, you may have completely lost any free time you would have had. So I'm definitely was thinking from it from a slightly different perspective. Is there any more nerd stuff to talk about? No, I don't think there really is. Plus, I don't know. I may fall asleep again pretty soon after this, so I probably don't need to drag my feet around. But yeah, I need to desperately install Windows updates and finish Virtue's Last Reward, and then I'll update everything. Update the Windows, update the NVIDIA drivers. One more nerd thing. I may have mentioned this, I may have not. I think I did mention it, but I forget. There was a podcaster who was wanting to run a bunch of rock speakers all around a large area, former, I think, hippie commune that he bought. And so he wants to once a year do like a Halloween event where there would be a bunch of sound effects, and in general he just wants ambient music / noise playing. And so I looked into it, and there is a Yamaha surround sound system that's like, I think it's something like an A3800 or something, that's a 9.2 surround system. And this was about the best thing I could figure. In particular, since it's not like you could, for almost any scenario, it's not like you would really buy speakers that are 400 watt speakers. You're going to usually, even if you have a big need for sound, you usually will address that need by creating more speakers and more amplifiers, not by having bigger speakers with stronger amplifiers. And the 9.2 system is potentially 900 watts, and I think last time I had heard, and I don't think the standard's going to change ever, that there's a limitation of 1500 watts that any single appliance can draw from any circuit, or any amount you can take from a circuit anyway. So yeah, a 9.2 surround sound system with a average weight AWG, average wire gauge, or American wire gauge. I'm not sure what AWG stands for, actually. Twisted pair. If you got that kind of speaker wire, which is the thickest I think that they sell on a quick Google search, that's what came up, would go 100 feet. So each rock speaker theoretically could be 100 feet from a centralized location where an amp would be, and then what you could do with that, if you were if you had a large enough areas, you could have a nice 9.2 surround sound system for like a outdoor theater or a home theater or something, like 100 feet, like with the wires going straight, that's like huge amount of run. And if you do that and you're planning on having a event once a year with a Halloween event that you want sound effects and you want the speakers to be more spread out, you can do that fairly easily. You buy one 100 wire for each speaker, and then you have a like buried outlet where you want it, since these are outdoor rock speakers. Now, inherently, the bigger problem you're going to have with some crazy setup like this, besides also needing all the money in the world, is you're going to fairly quickly find out that rock speakers are not good quality speakers. You could probably get around that somewhat, because depending on how much you believe the casing and the timber of the back soundproofing of a speaker is, you might be able to just get a rock speaker enclosure cheap, rip out low quality speakers, rip out really high quality speakers, and that would be an expensive gamble, certainly from standard areas, and then do a in-place replacement for it. Let's see, level by level gaming says, been playing a heavy modded Fallout New Vegas with my extra time, but if I get Cyberpunk for Christmas, that'll be my new pastime. Yeah. Sounds like a good plan. The other problem about doing a 9.2 surround sound system is, while 7.1, which would be 7 channels of audio, let's see, two surrounds, 2 backs, a left, a right, and a center, and then the 0.1 is this one subwoofer. When you get to 9, that's not adding a surround forward and a surround back. Usually, at that point, it tends, when you're talking about a 9.2 setup, you're probably more talking about a top center, top forward, and top back, where the sound is supposed to somehow be somehow be higher, so you get these more sound effects of like a helicopter passing by or something like that in a movie. And that would be pretty difficult to do outside, which that's what he wants to do with this. Like it would be an easy argument to tell somebody, hey, if you want nine speakers, a 9.2 surround amp is the right way to go. This is a Yamaha brand too. I've found Yamaha does very nicely on the features, and the features are kind of what you want in a receiver. I think you would be hard pressed, unless you are just a major audiophile, to get a decent amplifier and yet be unhappy with it because it sounds slightly different than what you wanted. Almost all amplifiers have equalizers that work perfectly. They sound perfectly well. As long as you don't have a defective or broken unit, they're all gonna work the same way. So what you're really looking for in a surround sound receiver is, does it have the newest Dolby Atmos setup, or DTS, or Dolby Pro Logic, or does it have as many encodings as possible? Does it have an HDMI 4K connector on the back? What are the plugs on the back? Do they make sense for the systems that you would be using it with?
What do you think you're doing? It's just business. You crusty horseshoe.
That's kind of the main things there. Is, doesn't have enough plugs. I think you have a decent chance that you might get a surround sound receiver that has really only 1 or 2 HDMI connectors in general, and you will still end up having to buy a relatively cheap HDMI switch, which that stinks. But the features you want, and the features that you kind of would like to have, is can you pass video fairly easily through HDMI while listening to the audio of a different service? Does that include any network or streaming services? The Yamahas nowadays tend to connect to Spotify. They tend to allow network streaming of your own audio if you've set up a server. They tend to allow Bluetooth connection, Chromecast ability, things like that. If you don't have those kinds of features, where I feel like a Denon or a Marantz surround sound receiver might not have those features even now, and they definitely, those were what I was buying before, and while they were nice, certainly, they never seemed like they had the software side going for it, where my Yamaha surround sound like updates itself and has a nice on-screen display and a lot of settings like that. But yeah, if you were gonna do a big outdoor theater, one assumes you would at some point need to buy a really bright projector. Otherwise, you're gonna find really quickly that while you might be able to get the audio outside, if you're gonna watch any video with that audio, it's not gonna work very well. You could get, I think, a decent couple of space heaters and have a rock speaker pointed upward and then bounce the audio from the top of the space heaters back down. And if you pulled that off, then you could get some upfiring style effects on it. Honestly, the most difficult part of the concept of how would you set up a bunch of rock speakers outside, like, you could pretty easily do it on a first run temporary basis if you really just wanted like 5, but once you start getting into the bigger numbers, it starts to get a little crazier. At a certain point, also, if you want more than 9, then there are 11.2 surround sound amps, but I would also say at that point you probably should just buy 2 of the same amps and split it between 2 locations. But the most difficult part there is if he was going to do his Halloween event, he would probably want different sound effects playing in different areas, which means someone, and for this podcaster, he has access to someone who knows how to audio edit to at least some extent, I'm sure. But someone would have to find a software, and this is kind of where a if statement comes in, where someone would have to find a software where, darn it, where you can encode a 9.1, 9.2 surround sound file into something so it could be played back. And so what you would want to do is, for say the left speaker, you might say you put in there some spooky sounds of a ghost, and then for the right speaker you put in some spooky sounds for a for like a chainsaw wielding maniac, and you do that for each speaker, because the thought would be during the Halloween event they would take those speakers and move them further apart. Of course, you'd have to get the audio just right, because you wouldn't have any real choice there at all. So the audio balancing, this would be definitely a project that would take, I think, at least 6 months minimum, to make sure you've got all the audio perfectly, and to to figure out the software, because I doubt it's going to be as something as easy as just Audacity when you start talking about 9.2. And I don't know what you do with the two subwoofer or low field effect channels. What they go to the subwoofers. I guess it's probably worth mentioning that I do have a history of being a bit of an audiophile, so these things I have worked with before, but not anytime recently. Certainly you could go into a software like Audacity and make a 5.1 surround sound file easily, but then there are definitely questions about, if you make this file, can you encode it into a Blu-ray that would play in a Blu-ray player, or do you at that point have it have it burnable to a DVD? I don't know if you can even make a DVD with a 9.2 audio channel. I wouldn't be surprised if you can't. So if you don't have a DVD player, or if you don't have the capability of burning something to a DVD player, then it comes back to, how do you get the audio into into the surround sound receiver in the first place? You gotta hope that there's either an application that you could stream the music into, or you could put it on a USB thumb drive and plug that into surround sound, which would be certainly that oddly has become kind of the preferred method for moving music around, is just have it on a thumb drive. Or, well, it was until people just had things on Spotify and on their cell phones. Well, I think I've rambled long enough here. I don't think there's any more nerd things to do. Long story short there, I did email the person and say, here's my suggestion. A lot of considerations, since I know his ranch, as it were, is outside of the city limits, so there's a decent chance you need a lightning rod. There's a decent chance that you need to inspect the electricity, because once you start trying to pull 900 watts out of an outlet, you may find out that your electricity is really, really bad. There's a decent chance that you will just eventually get hit by lightning, not like a direct strike, but some small lightning somewhere will hit the ground and go through a rock speaker. So I would definitely want to at least weatherproof with PVC piping, or try and kind of shield and ground with metal conduit for each location, each run of the rock speakers. I would definitely have a budget and be ready for those speakers to be broken fairly quickly, 3-4 years most, just because of the weather. But yeah, I said some of that I didn't think of. And almost certainly sending an unsolicited email to a semi-celebrity is gonna get me nowhere. But whatever. Let's talk about video games for what little there is to say about video games. It is, as we are approaching Christmas, it's pretty much a certainty that there won't be a Steam sale. Like, maybe there will be a New Year's Steam sale that happens, but I doubt there will be a Christmas Steam sale. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a Steam sale that came out right on Christmas Day or the day before, and then it ended on New Year's. And I'm not even sure I'd really want to buy too much. Honestly, for the past year and a half, every Steam sale has just been like, well, I've got all these games, and do I have a good justification for buying more games? Often I come back and then after asking myself that and say, no, I really don't. It's not like I've been doing a great job of pre-recording footage or anything. we're having a bit of a slowdown now, but whatever. Here we have a game on Steam called The Deepest, which is a pixel graphics hover jet jump game and shooting. It's 59 cents, English full audio allegedly. It doesn't look interesting at all. So, yeah, we're pretty much going to end up saying that for everything. Here we have 100 Hidden Aliens, which this is from the developer who's making more and more games on almost a monthly basis. December 2nd, December 9th, November. Actually, no, it's much faster than a monthly basis. The entire bundle is $5.26. This game is 89 cents. And it's just like cheap, low effort, hidden object game. Trying to at least, I will give them credit for the fact that they are they are making a good effort to stay with a consistent art style, whereas other developers would almost certainly try and flood Steam with just random hidden object games that they could make as quickly as possible. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Uterine Supremacy, which I feel like I had seen a similar game like this about a year ago, and it seems like once a year you get something like this, which is pretty much a joke game. Top-down twin-stick shooter. You're shooting a baby. It needs a controller. It's 99 cents. It's English full audio. Yeah, there's just not enough game here, really, I think, for it to make sense. There in this version of the game seems to be kind of like boss fights. So that seems like that's at least something different. And see, this is what we've seen before, where in a different game there was just this odd offshoot and then a continuation of the foreground movement, which I don't know if that's supposed to, like, was that supposed to be, like, see, this would be the eggs. So what is this supposed to be? Like, it's really couldn't be the urethra, because the urethra is not deep into the vagina. I'm gonna use some technical terms here. So it seems like there's just like a tear in the wall here, because this can't be the cervix. What the cervix would be at the end. So yeah, it once again seems like these troll game developers don't know basic anatomy when making the games. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Epic Food Fight VR, which, okay, that concept sounds interesting. Can you do something with it? No, I don't think so if they're flossing, which, thank goodness the kids aren't obsessed with flossing anymore. At least they're not so obsessed with it that the regular TV advertisements are encouraging it or advertising around it, so I don't see it. 99 cents for a VR game is incredibly cheap. English only. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more to say there. Twitch still consistently having trouble from like December 19th. Like the fact that I pulled up news from December 19th and today is the 21st definitely shows how slow of a weekend it was. Also, I wasn't checking my Twitch very often. Users are experiencing errors when submitting a case to their help portal. They resolved the issue. See, Gamatsu has an article, Seal, No Surge DX, and R, No Surge DX, delayed to March 4th, 2021. So it's Seal, No Surge DX, and then a different game called R, No Surge DX. And I assume this is some kind of fantasy mech JRPG game, but it's being delayed. No surprise there. That. Next, we have a game on Steam called Malmere, which looks to me like it is a tile-based, almost Carcassonne game. Story-based board game of building an automation. Control resources are diverted and ensure there's enough workers. $12.74. English only. This does look like a board game. Just does that mean it's inherently going to be a good game or not? Though, or I'm kind of concerned by the fact that you zoom in. Yeah, that seems like too micromanagey. I'd also say the floating islands would just want to have the bare minimum of division between them, not wide gaps. That way you don't make the screen feel like it's being stretched to fill up the whole screen. And you probably would want to work fairly hard to not have them all look uniform as far as the platforms go. Yep. Yeah, from the best I can tell, this looks like it's just an overly complicated resource management game. But yeah, that doesn't interest me. I think I stopped everything downloading, but I'm not 100% sure. So, if I'm having a slowdown because of that, whoops. That's about all I have to say there. But I think may just boil down to more everybody's trying to use the internet. A new emulator has forked from DOSBox called DOSBox Pure, and I think it's a new emulator, either that or they released a new version. Okay, cool. Like, I am not likely at this moment, I would say, to get deep into the weeds, as it were, as far as specific emulators. Playing old games, I just don't think that's really worth my time. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called the Arcane Tower, which looks like a kind of Myst-inspired adventure puzzle game. Yeah, it looks good. It's VR, it's early access, and it's coming soon. No. Well, we'll just have to wait until it actually comes out. Winter of 2021. Seems kind of hopeful almost to announce or list a game on Steam that's coming out a year later. Because there's that level of just optimism that everything will be back to normal as far as the economy and video game sales by the end of 2021, which arguably one would hope that's the case.
Only death can sate this hunger.
Hmm. And I'm just gonna ride as many victories as possible. Yeah, we are not anywhere close to. We are not anywhere close to getting the battle pass done. So I think we're pretty much determined I'm not gonna buy the battle pass for Shadowverse. Level by level gaming says off to the night shift. Ugh, I'll catch you later. All right. Can't argue with that. I don't want people losing their jobs. I kind of enjoyed the night shift, as it were. If you're going right now, depending on what time zone you're in, you're probably closer to what they would describe as a second shift employee, whereas third shift, night shift employees would start around 10 p.m. and leave around 6 a.m. And I definitely did work at least one job that helped do its part to drive me crazy, certainly, by having me work third shifts. I was completely alone in a big office, and while that may sound great, just like a empty, creepy office every night certainly didn't help anything, and it was ruining like whatever life I had at the time, and it really was, because I had literally no like interaction with people. I would have to come home at 6 a.m. and then immediately go to sleep, and then I would sleep all day when everybody else was awake, and then like not interact with anybody. So it was not a good system, certainly. I think there probably is, if we're gonna say guinea pigs can't be bought except for in pairs because they get lonely, I think there's probably be similar legal requirements that you can't have somebody work a job alone for the entirety of their shift. Like that just, of course, that would mean a lot of security guards, a lot of people would then have be like legally required to hire a second person just to keep them company. But yeah, that would actually probably be all right. I don't know how I'd really feel about it if that job had been only like 4 hours a night versus 8 hours. That may have changed the equation a bit. But yeah, I definitely don't like first shift where you're waking up or getting to work at 6, or waking up at 6 and getting to work at 8 or 9 or 10. Those are the more standard jobs times, and I think most people are fairly used to that, but it's not my preferred sleep schedule ever. Of course, at the core of it, my insomnia is just a problem with any schedule at all. So I don't know if there's a real solution there for me personally. But if I could pick a shift and had to pick a shift, I would pick second shift, somewhere around 3, 4, or 5 in the afternoon. Get off work around 10, 11, 12. Not go all the way through the night. Level by Living Game says I work 5:30 at night to 5:30 in the morning, which that's 12 hours. I might not interact with anyone if I don't get a service call, and I'll play Witcher on my Switch. If I get calls, I might be busy all night, hit or miss. And I struggle with insomnia too. I refuse meds. That sadly really aren't very meds that work for a long haul. They can give you like Ambien, and then you'll develop secondary symptoms of like blacking out and sleepwalking and things like that. But yeah, but yeah, insomnia sucks. Yeah, I have had thoughts about working at like a server location overnight. That would be probably fine. The overnight job I had, you didn't even get service calls. If anybody called at all, it was like either my boss who was staying up and watching over me via the security cameras and kind of spying on me. Although in all fairness, I was rather young and probably deserved to be spied on. But yeah, that was pretty much the only calls I got. And really, it's fair to say that in that job specifically, it wasn't a matter of this job is taking over my entire life and I'm not doing anything else at all, to a point where if I at that time had to like mow the grass or get groceries or do any kind of house chores or anything like that, I would have not gotten it done. I would have failed miserably in that attempt. But the reason I left that job is because they literally were hyping up like this big meeting, big event, this annual get together, and oddly they were hyping up like these sandwiches. So I was like, I went through this big meeting and the sandwiches were kind of crappy, and the big meeting was basically to announce that nothing was going to change and they were just going to maintain the course, when for the industry it was a TV station right when the when the transition to HD happened, like the digital transition to digital signals that got watered down, so it actually wasn't a transition to high definition TV. This really was the point where like I'd been in the facility and looked at all their equipment and I'm like, all right, well, this is all old equipment, but the new transition's happening. Of course we're gonna develop a plan and we're gonna make changes. Like, we're legally being required here to make some changes and improvements and move forward and have a plan at least. Like, and the big message that was sent is, no, we're not going to do any of it. Like, I think they probably bought like one piece of equipment just to upconvert all of the standard definition stuff to from analog to digital, and that was it. There was no moving up from what would have been, I imagine, 480i interlaced video over the air to like even a 720 or 1080p resolution. There's just no concern or interest in that at all. And that was one of the problems. The other problem was that there was just a lot of negativity amongst all of the employees, and it's probably, in retrospect, is ironically almost the pot calling the kettle black. But yeah, I found all the coworkers that I never even had to really interact with just super negative, and every interaction with them what was a negative one, and I'm like, oh man, this is not good, not good at all. Um, but in retrospect, I think I'm at best batting 50-50 as far as jobs I've had where there's been negative or majority of negative coworkers or bosses and employees, people, clients, things like that, and jobs uh, where there's been moderately average or pleasant people to deal with. But yeah. And the capper on that, of course, is that was like a very early job I had working at the TV station. And then I got a call from them, and it was a completely different person who was the boss. The person who was the boss had either moved on or been fired. I imagine he'd been fired or moved on. Well, he'd probably been fired because it was kind of a revolving door where it seemed like people didn't stay around that long. Or if they did stay around that long, they didn't really do anything. So that was that. But yeah, somebody called me and they asked me if I wanted to work that old job, and I'm like, and I go, okay. Well, it's been probably 12 years at that point, and I'm like, all right, well, I would want $15 an hour to do that job. And he goes, and this probably dates it because this was like, he said, well, this job pays $6.50 an hour, and I'm like, it paid me that like 12 years ago. So not only had the pay not increased in over a decade, but I assume, and I actually got information that pretty much confirmed it because someone else I knew happened to walk in there, that I assume none of the equipment and none of the upgrades that needed to happen ever happened. And there's a certain level where a nerd, a computer geek would say, hey, let's get the newest thing all the time, and they'd like to just be a shopaholic on the company's budget. But I am not exaggerating to say that this TV channel literally had patch cables, like an old telephone operating board, where you would plug in just a big stereo jack, not mini stereo jack, but thick phono style cord from one plug to another plug. Something that there was like 2 or 3 floor to ceiling racks of patch cables for no good reason. You could certainly have done the exact same thing with a digital switcher that would have probably taken 1 unit in a server, or moved everything digitally anyways. It was just ridiculous amounts of old equipment that they needed to move on from. And what was one of the stupid things is that you would think that they would at least care enough to make sure the thing that makes the money. So while there was a relatively modern like hard drive server that they put their commercials on, and the hard drives in it would break all the time, and they wouldn't really fix it. So very often the commercials were not airing, and it was messing up everything. Like you probably, an average person has probably never seen a TV channel where the commercials just kind of don't play, or they glitch out or something like that.
I'm going home now.
Now, arguably nowadays there might be very little local commercials that get played at all. So the live broadcast of the national commercials is part of the live broadcast. So there's actually only a small section in the middle or at the beginning of each break where local commercials can be played. But yeah, it was a big hassle, and then it became part of my job to write down in a paper book, like every time a problem occurred, because they hadn't made the right updates and the right redundancy that you would have needed to have happen. Of course, the irony there is that, like, a TV station, much like radio stations nowadays, can literally just be run by one person through remote connections and through one computer. There's really no need to handle much of the scheduling or decisions of any sort like that. It is just and even then, like, you weren't affecting prime time really. Whatever the national affiliates of Fox or CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, whatever they were broadcasting, you would just rebroadcast that almost always. And if you weren't rebroadcasting it, it almost certainly was because there was something really objectionable to it, and then you'd rerun something else instead. But yeah, running a local TV station is not fun. In my experience, it's not this exciting experience. It's not like pirate radio or how you'd imagine it would be, or anything like that. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Zup Z, which is a platforming puzzle game. I think there's been multiple Zup games. Yes, 16 now, totaling $14.11. Zup Z is 84 cents. 512 achievements. So, yep, a run of achievement games flooding the Steam storefront, and still nothing is being done about it. Although it wouldn't be surprising if it turned out that some of these games were held off for review so that they were released at a terrible time. Next, we have a game on Steam called Breath, where it seems like it's some kind of polygonal game, and that's about it. Breath is a hard and short game. Yeah, I don't think this is anything I'd want to play. This just looks like an asset flip game trying to look unique. $2.99 English and Portuguese Brazil. Alright. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Mid-Jungard. Sorry, I went quiet there. This is a player versus player game. Got some screenshots not loading up. Thought I had mostly had that fixed. This is early access for $9.89. This feels like you would be playing in a Viking area, but they're calling it a Tolkien-esque multiplayer game in the world of a pre-Viking Midgard. So that's how you pronounce that. That's probably how you spell Midgard. Yeah. Doesn't look like there's enough here to make this stand out enough. Problem is, almost any player versus player game is not going to stand out enough. There we go. Getting quiet, sorry. Here we have a game on Steam called Tactical Warfare Simulator. See, this is the ridiculousness of this. Is I barely just woke up, or I feel like I barely just woke up, and I'm already getting sleepy again. This game looks like it's absolutely nothing. It's VR. No, it needs a controller. It's $42.49. English full audio. Visually, it just looks like there's nothing here. I think I just need victories, so I think we could probably swap around and just try something different. Let's see. We have Aliens Isolation. Apparently is the free gift on Epic. Before that was Defense Grid: The Awakening. I have not been paying enough attention at all to grab all these games, but it doesn't really matter to me anyway, so yeah, it's just worth mentioning, I suppose, since we see it. 15 days of free games as a general concept, while nice, is not particularly even that generous, and it highlights a point about the Epic Store that they've really not succeeded in bringing more people to the party. Every little controversy could have been an opportunity for more game developers and publishers to move over to Epic, but it seems to me like the fans of the Epic, while they may be fairly loyal, they are also fairly limited and not growing at a rate that you would be able to appreciate, at least. Because you'd think, like, the most recent controversy was with Good Old Games and the game Devotion being announced and immediately pulled. So why wouldn't that have been a point where Epic could have stepped in and potentially tried to get more fandom, get more people to go to the Epic Games Store? The only problem there is, specifically in that instance, it's not like Epic could announce that they're going to publish Devotion, because I think Epic is in part owned by a Chinese company, and they definitely want to do business in China. So I don't know if a great way to phrase things so that you don't end up getting the ire of China also. Let's see. Let's see. Next we have a TechRaptor article. Star Citizen's first dynamic event includes server-wide battles. Okay. I feel like Star Citizen is the game that's been in development for like 4 years and still isn't actually a finished product. LibRetro has made their Discord public if you're interested in following them on Discord. I don't know if too many people are still using Discord. Like, I think the concept there was decent, and I could see an argument to going back and using Discord for your replacements for things like 4chan and Reddit. I'd say the Discord is a lot more relevant at the moment than things like Goat, which was a spin-off competitor to Reddit, and Reddit still is fairly reasonably the top dog as far as forums and places where you would have text-based commentary that's not more specialized like Twitter or Facebook. I got an email from YouTube telling me that if my email address is inactive for 2 years, it'll be shut down. And I think the email address that they sent it to is like the Google Plus pages email that they automatically created for me. So I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever even used this email. I don't even know how to log into this email. So I suppose they could shut down that email address. That's fine by me. I definitely have been thinking about the potential just death of my email accounts, really, and the fact that nobody's emailing anybody anymore, and all I get on a daily basis, besides things I'm just emailing to myself, are just advertisements. And so I'm thinking, like, maybe I should just take it the full direction and go zero inbox and potentially delete a bunch of old advertisements, because there's like 30,000 emails in there. I could potentially delete a bunch of them and move on. Although at a certain point, if I delete my entire history, as it were, my entire digital existence, that there won't be anything for the historians to see later on if I ever got to the point where a historian might be interested in what a average nerd's email account looked like back in the old days.
No one gets past me.
Should I attack? Should I wait?
You're full of at your service. No one gets past me.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Cubia, which looks like a puzzle game where you're walking around rotating cube worlds, almost like Mario Galaxy, except for cubes instead of round spheres. There might be enough of a concept here. $9.99 English only. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. I think there's a decent chance I'll be disappointed when I see the reviews, and the reviewers themselves will be disappointed, but there's, I think, a small chance it would.
Too slow. At your service.
It would work, or would satisfy. TechRaptor has an article here. Do the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X live up to the hype? Let's see if there's a thing here. Nope. I don't think you're going to get a direct response without reading the article. I would say both of the pieces of hardware probably live up to their claims of their hardware. It really comes down to software and games that are the bigger issue. And arguably, I think you could say that there's always going to be a feeling that there's not enough optimization or enough backwards compatibility. Bigger news, of course, is Sony has removed Cyberpunk 2077 and promises refunds now. So, yep. Apparently Sony was trying to play a bit of hardball, and then they eventually caved in. I don't know if they really could do anything else. It was certainly making Sony look bad because of what CD Projekt Red had done by making such a buggy game.
Don't underestimate me.
Next, we have a Gamatsu article. The Spirit of the North Enhanced Edition is coming to the Xbox Series in early 2021, which is weird because I don't think this game has come out. It came out in May of 2020. So, yeah, this is on my wish list. It's overwhelmingly positive. It came out and I pretty much forgot about it in less than a year. Which, if there's anything good that may come out of 2020, is that it may be the year that we finally get so few games announced that I can actually keep it all in my head and not forget something a week, a couple months after it's announced. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bridge to Another World, Secrets of the Nutcracker Collector's Edition. This is from Big Fish, formerly Big Fish Games. I really don't know why the Nutcracker specifically is such a famous play, other than the fact that it probably has famous music in it. Because the story, frankly, seems weird. The stage play on it doesn't, like, I haven't seen a ton of stage presentations of the Nutcracker, but the one I did see seemed fairly unimpressive. If it's the one thing it may have for it than most other presentations is that there are actual ballerinas in actual ballerina outfits doing the dances on the floors, whereas in almost every other play you would have people who probably have done some ballet, but they're usually in costume and not doing just full-on ballerina presentations. I suppose the Nutcracker also works fairly well internationally because there's not really any dialogue, and probably works very well for young kids. As for this hidden object game, it's just Big Fish's standard modus operandi. $12.59, English full audio. They look fine, but they don't look $12.59 worthy. Gamatsu has an article here. MAG Interactive acquires a mobile studio app rope for $6 million. So there's one mobile phone developer being acquired by another mobile phone developer, game developer. Man, I should have tried to move faster. Definitely should have tried to move faster, because if I was having trouble getting out of bed earlier in the day, I should have obviously known that I was going to have trouble going through games. And I opened a bunch of garbage games like this, Labcraft Survival. Let's just quickly show it to say, yeah, it's a rogue-like garbage game for $2.69, English and Russian. Don't need to go any further than that.
Lightning storm.
All right already. I surrender.
Mana, come forth.
Let's go in.
My bolts are too. I'll fry you to a crisp.
Hit that. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Poco in Dungeon, which is an anime girl flying through a dungeon crawler by the looks of it.
I need more beer.
It's basically, what if you had control, except for in an asset flip dungeon with an anime girl that, frankly, from the back, it might as well be an anime guy with this big bulky outfit and like wearing shorts. It looks kind of like an anime guy. It may literally be an anime guy. No, it's a girl, and that is a skirt. But yeah, there's nothing here. Like, complete disconnection between these characters and these characters. $1.41, bunch of languages allegedly supported. Let's see. Connection unstable. I'm gonna have to lower the bandwidth a little bit more, I think.
Shall I walk with you along your fated path? This match is mine. Your end has been foretold.
There we go. See. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Guardians of Peace, which just looks like a French-Canadian cartoon that got turned into a game instead. See, $14.99 English full audio. I don't think there's anything more to say. Destroy an enemy. 5. Play this.
That looks so sweet, you'll get cavities.
And then play this.
Ooh, honey glazed.
You don't stand a chance. Time to go the whole hog. Happy? Oinky.
There we go.
Assault.
Yeah, Guardians of Peace. $14.99 English full audio. Sorry. Probably just said that. Gamatsu has an article here. Bustafellows coming west for the Switch and PC in 2021. This looks like a visual novel. Let's see. Yeah, visual novel from PQ. Honestly, we've kind of had a lacking of visual novels that are of any quality coming out lately or being announced. This one looks interesting in that you have some characters being drawn as older looking characters, and then of course he immediately gets killed. I think we might be hitting a point in the anime art style where we're going to have more characters aging up. That very well might directly be attributable to the fact that the animators themselves are getting older, and the target audience is very possibly getting older.
Honey glazed.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Monstrous Molecules, which
It all ends here.
looks to me like it's some kind of cell phone like puzzle game with also
How did I lose?
some kind of top-down Binding of Isaac style game. I need to see how this actually plays. Yeah, you're in a room, you're shooting, kind of like Binding of Isaac, and in shooting you're solving some kind of puzzles. So yeah, clearly this is a guy who was heavily inspired by Binding of Isaac and then instead made a terrible looking and terrible playing game from the looks of it. Yeah, I just don't see how you'd pull off something like that. Like I don't know how you're gonna make a rip-off of Binding of Isaac at all and succeed. Like that seems fairly crazy. Well, regardless, this game is $7.49 English. They're comparing it, allegedly full audio, to Binding of Isaac and Shadow of Tomb Raider. I'll put this on the fall list just to see if maybe it plays way better than it looks like it does, but I suspect that's not going to be the case. Here we have a troll game, Putin Kills Christmas, from WTB, who we haven't seen them put out a troll game in a while. It's 99 cents English only. Nothing really needs to be said there. And I can see the beginning of the end, which is good because I'm clearly getting sleepy already and need to just fall back asleep. Although at a certain point, I feel like I'm sleeping my entire life away, and that may just be the case because I bet my quality of sleep is still not particularly great. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Be Hunted, which looks like a horror game with dark screenshot syndrome. It's early access for $8.50, English and French. Yeah, I don't think I can believe that there's a game here I want to play. It's just too dark. Even in the trailer, it's too dark. If there was like some system that made the screen brighter when you were moving or something, that could have potentially countered the screenshots a little bit, but no, I didn't see that. I don't know if there's really a reason behind the idea, frankly, of making a horror game set in the dark and then have a system to counter it. But we certainly do see that in a lot of games. But it has to be a very limited system, clearly. Let's see. OpenCritic seems particularly peeved by Cyberpunk 2077. So here they have an article, Cyberpunk 2077 could land CD Projekt Red in legal trouble. I think that's probably true, because it seems like they may have admitted to lying to their own investors and potentially lying to business partners in a way that might be seen as a breach of good faith or a breach of contract. Dealing in good faith is a requirement in most contracts. Otherwise, you are opening yourself up to fraud claims. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Battlefield 3 community modding platform VU released. Interesting. I think VU is probably a bad name though, but it's short, and so I can't hate it for that.
Get back here.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Spooky Speakeasy, which looks like a kind of bartending and you talk to people game. I think Nirvana was like this, except for this time you're not even making real drinks. I feel like if you're going to make a bartending game, which is a slightly interesting concept, you should just literally teach people how to make drinks correct. It wouldn't really hurt to teach people that like a Cosmopolitan is this much of that ingredient versus that much of that ingredient, and then it's shaken and such. as someone who's upset that there aren't any new bar rescues because all the bars are shut down, and has seen all the previous bar rescues, I probably could go back and watch them all again. There is seemingly a large number of people that just go to bars and say, give me a beer or give me whatever you got. And they just take whatever you got. They don't. For fans of alcohol and cocktails, they seem to, there seems to be few people that actually know what a cocktail should look like or how it's made. Even if they are never actually going to make it themselves. Like I know how to cook a burger, and I know how to cook very complicated foods too that I would never cook, but at least I would know what it should look like in general. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Cars vs. Zombies, which seems like you're in a car that can shoot at some asset flip zombies in this hideous world. And it looks like total garbage. It's 99 cents, English full audio. This is weird that only Shadowverse is having network troubles, but yep. I don't know how to fix that particularly. I'll just try and use less bandwidth in total. Alright. Next we have a game on Steam here called Idlecoin, which is a real-time cryptocurrency mining and management simulation. Free to play, English and French. Which any game like this you have to wonder, is it actually mining cryptocurrency? We're at a point where mining cryptocurrency is not even viable. And boy, in retrospect, that sure means a lot of people mined a lot of bitcoins or tried to mine for bitcoins and failed miserably. Maybe got just tiny, insignificant fractions of bitcoins. On the other hand, I would have definitely should have mined a bitcoin in the early days had I heard of it. Like owning even a couple of them could potentially have made me a millionaire. And just having one for fun would have been fun too. Next we have a game on Steam called Fish to Cuffs, which seems like it's a fishing / shoot 'em up game. Bullet hell shoot 'em up. It is a different visual aesthetic. I have to applaud that. For as many shoot 'em up games where you're in a airplane or you're a magical girl on a broom fighting things in the case of Toho games, fishing is a different twist. $4.99 English only. There was a fishing game that I played for a while on Android, and yeah, it didn't go anywhere. It was just boring idle game.
These weapons are for hunting. I surrender. Get back here.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Singularity. Which seems like one of these games where you play. It's not a game at all. It's a virtual reality art piece exploring the law of acceleration, returns, and the development of AI. What's funny is that there is a game called Singularity already on Steam. So, let me just double check that. Let's see, how can we get the thing to show up? Didn't I have it set so that the search bar would show up if I zoomed out? Maybe I set it so if I zoomed in, search bar would show up. There we go. Zoom in. Zoom in enough, that will show up just by coincidence. So yeah, we have Ashes of the Singularity. Why is there a big scroll bar here? You have Singularity, the game from 2010. Singularity Wish. Not a lot of things called Singularity, but enough, certainly. But yeah. In 2010, Activision and Ravensoft brought out this game called Singularity, where you were doing some first-person shooting against monsters. I don't even remember this. I thought Singularity was the time manipulation game, but I bet that was a different one. So, yeah, certainly weird to now have two things on Steam called Singularity, but I imagine the VR artistic experience will not really stay around.
Get back here. Get back here.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Savage, which looks like it's just an asset flip hunting game, for lack of a better description. This is from HM Games, which is different than HH Games. $7.19, bunch of languages. Savage looks like it's nothing. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Gym Deeps, which looks like it's a platforming game with some shooting abilities. I kind of like the art style, but I don't like the gameplay as it looks. And some of the elements, like this, seems like that's pretty bad. $15.29 English only. That seems particularly expensive also. I'm gonna put this on the fall list just to give it a chance, but I'm being generous. And I guess that means I'm probably, now that I think about it, I'm probably not gonna do any kind of end of the year special stream or anything like that. I'll probably stick to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, assuming Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is not Christmas. If it is Christmas, decent chance I'll skip it. But I may stream on Christmas Day. See, what does this do? Draw cards equal to the attack of your strongest character. Alright, well.
Ready to witness my true strength?
Time is of the welcome.
Do that.
Don't you wanna die? Color yourself.
And that.
Get back here.
And that. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Radioactive Dwarfs Evil from the Sewers, which is a brand new game according to the release date, and it definitely looks like something that you would have expected from an NES era game in '83. All the art and everything here definitely feels like it's got the mentality and art style of a '83 game or early '80s game. Early access, no reason for that to be early access. English and Russian. Once again, Seems ridiculous. $1.99. It's not asking a lot for sure, but does seem suspect that you'd put a game like that in early access. Here we have a game on Steam called Amboritio, which looks like an ugly dark screenshot roguelike game. Top-down game, dungeon crawler. $3.74, English only, nothing there. Next we have a Asian game that's called whatever this is, which like so many others looks just like a cell phone port. All the same, free to play, in-app purchases, Chinese only, and not really even qualified to comment there, so we'll just move on. Next we have a game on Steam called Brave Hero, which looks like a platforming game of no interest for 59 cents. And no surprise that games coming out the same week as Christmas aren't going to be good. Here we have a game called Jax Labyrinth, which looks like it's a almost Pac-Man clone, although he's not actually eating any of these red yellow dots. Maybe I was watching the wrong character since all these characters look the same. $1.19 English only. Sorry, I'm yawning. I'm falling asleep here. Alright.
Welcome the
Do
end.
this.
Don't you wanna
And
die?
then do this.
Rise to greater heights, higher than the clouds.
Color yourself.
That.
You're too strong.
Yeah, Jax Labyrinth here is $1.19 English only.
Exhilarating.
Close that. Did we get all the daily quests, or is there still like one victory? Because I don't want to play anymore. And yeah, there's like 2 more victories I could get and should get. But I'm hoping for just a quick disconnect, really. Here we have Minicar Money Chase, which is a low effort asset flip car racing car combat game. 59 cents English only. Next we have a game on Steam called Air Bounce Challenge, which looks like it's a running and jumping, maybe not parkouring game. In first person perspective though, that would make me very motion sick. And the locations look slightly well designed, but then all the visuals actually do look polygonal, and that's not helping anything visually. $3.74 English full audio. This would be an easy game to pass on, so I'm gonna definitely pass on it. Next we have a game on Steam called Zero Gunner, which looks like it is a shoot 'em up side-scrolling bullet hell game. $8.99 English and Japanese. What I like about this, and I still have a decent chance that I'd never actually play any game like this, top-down shooter, is that in a lot of screenshots you're not seeing the entire screen fill up. You see a full widescreen perspective here. It does seem like maybe this was a 2001 game that's getting released. But yeah, this doesn't look terrible. So I'm going to put it on the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam here called Granvols, which I think is, it's Gravvols as in gravity. Right. So it's gravity shifting world puzzle game, like kind of like Portal. $4.49, English and Russian. Well, despite the fact this might be a Russian troll game, nah, it's not a troll game for sure. It actually looks very polished. So I'm gonna put that on the fall list. So that actually does look like it might be something. Next we have a game on Steam called Exotanks. Which, if any of the videos would load up, we could look at it. It's free to play with a bunch of DLC. Wow. Massive amount of DLC. $44.99. English, Russian, in-app purchases. Well, I'll say Exotanks doesn't look horrible. It doesn't look amazingly good either. Not enough to justify asking for DLC for $44 as a way of supporting the developers. At a certain point, if you're trying to get just whales to support you, you might as well just list a different system. Actually, that would be an interesting twist if Valve did come out and say they were going to make a Patreon style system for game developers, specifically so you could fund game developers who have created games that you like, as a way of ensuring that they are actively capable of working on their next game. And if I was Valve, I would certainly say, well, we can't have that system open to everybody. We've got to put this. We have to have an approval process of some sort. But I wouldn't be surprised if Valve did try to make a system like that for everybody.
May the forest be at peace. Let's play.
Next we have a game on Steam called Hail the Kokotron, which looks like just a cooking simulator game. Once again, $21.24. This time it uses VR and it's English only. That doesn't really justify the price increase. Now I'm wearing out my voice and I don't have any justification for that.
You're done for. Assume Maple Leaf formation.
That and that.
Help me,
That.
Forest.
And that. Next we have a game on Steam here called Santa Claus in Trouble, which looks like it's a platforming game where you play as Santa Claus trying to get over a lot of different obstacles. It doesn't look particularly interesting as a game, though. Really, it feels like a game that if you're going to be able to play as Santa Claus, that should just be something that is a skin. Honestly, I wouldn't be upset if a lot of games like Dead by Daylight and the likes came out and said they were going to have Santa Claus skins where you could play as Santa Claus. Hitman would be a great example of a game where you could just reskin the main character in a Santa Claus outfit and nobody would really question it. I am not seeing a lot here to justify this. It's $8.99, bunch of languages. Next we have a game on Steam called Helios Battle Universe, which looks like a VR game where you shoot guns. That's pretty much it. $9.99, English full audio. Man, I'm so sleepy. I may finally hit the point where I accidentally fall asleep in the middle of a stream. I've probably done that before, actually. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if I have accidentally fallen asleep before.
I shine, that mortals may know the way forward. Mortals are adorable. I know when I've lost.
That.
Let's play.
And that.
Let's play.
Next we have a game on Steam, Pixel Game Maker series, Werewolf, Princess Kagura, which, okay. It says it's a character action game with action arcade elements. To me it looks pretty bland. And I don't know the story behind Princess Kagura. $6.99, English, Chinese, Japanese. Don't see anything interesting there or unique enough there. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Healing Animal, which seems like you play as this girl and you wander around some polygonal things. Then maybe you turn into animals and play as animals for a while. Alright. 1, 2, 3. Play. 1, 2. Well, yeah, this looks like it might be interesting. It's $14.99, bunch of languages, early access. We'll put it on the following list and see if there's a real game here. It seems to me like it might be a Korean game, first and foremost, since that seems like Korean writing, which might explain some of the weirdness there. Next we have a game on Steam here called VR Bike Tour, Exercise in the 22nd Century World. And is this supposed to hook up to like a bicycle like Peloton and then show you asset flipped images of scenery? Maybe. It's VR, it's $2.99, which is really cheap again for VR. English, German, Russian, and Chinese, which is an odd combination. That.
I will persevere.
And that. Next we have a game on Steam here called Hyperblade, where you're flying around a drone, which I have like 3 or 4 drone games that were on the following list, and I was trying to see if one of them might actually be worth playing, although I'm not sure that there's enough of a game to have a drone flying around game, racing game exist. This definitely feels more like a racing game than some of the other ones I've seen. Early access for $9.99 English on. Drones are another things that I think probably have fallen out of fads now. Because, yeah, you definitely am not hearing as many people talk about drones anymore and being obsessed with it as they were a few years ago. Next we have a game on Steam called War No Noe, which looks to me like it's some kind of polygonal strategy. They're calling it a real-time strategy war game. I'm not seeing a lot of animation at all. $17.79, English full audio. Sadly, this price tag might not scare away quite a few fans of these kinds of war game looking games or concepts.
Stay away.
Excuse me there. Next we have a game on Steam called Hexia, which looks like it's a hex grid resource management real-time strategy type game. Early access $4.99, English only. It doesn't look like anything of interest. We've scheduled this, we've lucked out here and gotten this to line up fairly well.
I did it.
And they seem to be giving away some a nice amount of free cards, which kind of makes me wonder, like, if there are any other games out there where it would really make sense to start playing them as Christmas is happening, because they would give away a lot of rewards. I need like one more victory, and I'm not going to bother to try and get it now because I'm falling asleep. Here we have a game called Pumping Simulation, which looks like a bunch of just random things that you can play with. Early access, $14.99, English full audio, then also Russian, Turkish, Chinese, and Japanese, which that is a weird combination. Gamatsu has an article, Raiden 4 X Mikado Remix is coming to Switch on April 22nd, 2021 in Japan, which apparently this is some kind of shoot 'em up. I would have thought Raiden wasn't a fighting game, but I guess I was wrong. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article, this week's Japanese game releases include what? Celeste Collection, Earth Defense Forces, World Brothers, Fight Gods, Sniper Elite 4, and Vampire. Then there is a large amount of digital things, some of which are just re-releases, like the Blob 2 coming out in Japan for the PlayStation 4 seems like an odd timed release, to say the least. You can get the feeling, though, looking at the listing of digital games, like Super Mahjong Graffiti, Nico Para 4 for the PS4, and then it not being released physical and digital, even though that's a new game. You can also see that the Switch is just doing great. It's just a massive amount of success for the Switch in Japan. Next we have a game on Steam here called Pandemos, which seems to be kind of nothing. This is 79 cents English from Portuguese Brazil. And that was literally the last thing I had. So I'll look quickly at the Humble Bundle, see if there's anything new. And then we'll go back to Twitter. XPlay retweeted a clip, or tweeted out a clip from their like Christmas musical episode that they made a long time ago. G4 tweeted it out, and XPlay really put it on. I mean, that was pretty crazy to say the least, but it also probably would not stand up to a second watching if I could watch it. Actually, that is an interesting question about how can you watch the old XPlay episodes. I wouldn't be surprised if they just start releasing old episodes on some kind of YouTube channel in supplemental to whatever new content G4 is planning on making. And the only game that came out over the course of the 2 hours I streamed was this game called Pull X, which looks like a low effort gravity simulator for $6.99. And then there's a TechRaptor article here that the Duke Nukem lawsuit over music settlement has been reached, which Bobby Prince and Gearbox and 3D Realms. If I recall correctly, I don't know if this was 100% Gearbox's fault as much as it was that 3D Realms had not paid Bobby Prince royalties, and now the music from the from Duke Nukem was being re-released in World Tour once again with royalties not being paid because Gearbox didn't know they had to, or didn't agree to when they bought the license, which them coming to a settlement may just be a sign of the pandemic more than anything, but it also is, I'm sure, a fairly good indicator that the court systems are fairly slow and clogged, particularly now. Alright, well, I don't think there's anything else to talk about, and like I've been saying, I dropped the ball pretty badly today talking about deep nerd stuff for the first hour, and then barely spending an hour and 12 minutes to go through some terrible pre-Christmas games on Steam. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon. Or you can friend me on Steam and get me a gift card or a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.